So, hello, revolutionaries, and welcome back. I know it's been a really long time, and all of you have been really loyal to me all this time, never leaving and patiently waiting for more videos. So, here it comes. And this time, improved my teaching techniques, and also, we're going to apply a new notes making technique. This time I haven't read the chapter myself beforehand, and it's not going to be like I'll explain some two, three main concepts to you, hand you over those notes, and that's all. No, no, no. This time we'll be studying together, so you can think of me as your study buddy, and I'll explain things to you which you might find difficult, which might be difficult for you to comprehend. So I'll try to make it easier for you. Also, we'll create on the spot notes this time. I haven't prepared notes beforehand, and we'll create it as we read. So if I remember correctly, last time we were starting postmodernism. Okay. And of course, yeah, this stuff is already very messy. Let me tell you beforehand, this whole block regarding modernism, postmodernism, postmodernism, all this stuff, it's really hectic and really messy. It's all everything is just so mingled up. Okay, it's just mangled. So you don't need to focus too much in this block. Okay, this block is not so much important. You just need to know the main concept, the main highlights of every topic. You don't need to go into any detail. And what's the best way to find out how to read a chapter? Let me tell you in advance. What's the best way to realize which topics are important, which topics are not so important, and how much attention to pay to what kind of stuff? Okay, right? Like we have postmodernism here. So obviously you can't learn all of this, like from here to here. You can't remember it like this exactly, right? You just need to figure out some basic points from here and here around which this whole thing is written up. So how will you decide which points, which parts are important and which can be cut off or which can be skipped? So one thing that you must do before attempting to read any block, just download the previous year question papers. Okay, read three, four previous year question paper, go through them again and again. Then some specific concepts will stuck into your mind, some specific topics or uh, con excerpts from some stories. They will just keep on repeating inside those papers, and from there you'll get a very good idea what kind of things they ask in the exams and what kind of things are really important. Now this book was written from a point of view that will help you to broaden your mind, broaden your horizons, increase your comprehension abilities. This book was never ever written from the point of view that you just read it and you give exams and score good in exams. No, no, no. It was written to expand your brain. Okay, to make those brain cells work harder and become stronger. So this is actually kind of philosophical book. This book is filled with philosophies, and every person has a different view towards a certain philosophy. Okay, every person has different philosophies. Every person has different ways to understand the same philosophy as well. So this book was personally written, personally it was written by the author with the intention of broadening your horizons of your mind. Okay, it wasn't written from the perspective that you have to answer some questions in an exam and then pass. But we need to pass the exams, of course. So we'll just cover up those points which will help us pass the exam, since we do not have so much time now. If you were reading it from the starting days, like from like you took admission in July 2023, and you started reading it from that time onwards, so you could have delved into the philosophy of this book, which is very beautiful and profound. But now, since we do not have much time, we have probably 4 or 5 months at most. So we just need to finish up from the exam point of view. Without further ado, let's start. Postmodernism. Modernism began to decline in the 1930s. Okay, now this little s is actually very important. So what they're saying is that modernism started declining or began to decline after the 1930s. One thing to be noted here is that it does not specifically say 1930, so it's not like 1930 came and suddenly there was no modernism. It just started declining. Like wait, yeah, this really bad drawing is created by me. So like modernism was here, it was here, 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 and then from this point onward, it started declining. Okay, this is 1930. This here is the year 1930. Okay, 1930. And it could have taken it many, many years to completely finish off. So let's say when it completely ended, what year it was, I don't. Maybe it was the 1950s. Some also consider this period to be 1960s as well. There are different views about it since there is no specific or universally accepted timeline for any of these periods. So some authors take some different timelines, some authors take some different timelines. So we can create our own timeline as well that matches up with the most of the authors. So I've created my own timeline here, and according to my timeline, it's sorry, not here. Where were the notes? It's actually in the notes here. Uh, Book, and here it is. So my own timeline is this: that the modernism was from 1900s. Again, emphasis on the S. So it was from 1900. So maybe by 1900s, I mean that it started around 1895, 1896, 1897, or maybe 1901, 1902. So started about that period. Okay, plus minus 3 or 4 years, and then it ended about 1930s. Now 1930s can actually go till 1940s or 1945s as well. Okay, because modernism took a bit too long to end, considering how long it was altogether. Then the 1960s. Now, one thing to be noted here is that it says the 1960s are the beginnings of postmodernism. Okay. Previously, we read that postmodernism has already started by 1945. That is after the end of the World War II, right? So, what is this about then? So this is what I'm trying to tell you, that many authors have different perspectives about the timelines from in which the period started or a period ended. So this author here has taken the timeline to be 1960s, a much further one than we generally see. But here it is. You don't need to remember this at all. Okay, this line is completely useless. You do not need to remember this at all. No, 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 no. You just remember this timeline if you really want to remember it on tips. So just remember this timeline. Yeah, I'll explain what interwar period is, of course. So we know, according to the more general timeline, we know that modernism started around 1900 and ended by 1930s, right? And postmodernism started about 1945s, right? So what was it between this period, between 1930 to 1945? What was this? Nobody tells you, right? There's no mention of it inside in the book in those blocks, but we know that there's definitely time gap between them, right? I mean, here it has already ended. According to the book, it did end by 1930, you can say, and postmodernism starts about 1945. So what happened to between these 15 years? Okay, so between these 15 years, we see this interwar period. This interwar period is what was between modernism and postmodernism. Now, interwar period was parallel with modernism as well for some period of time, since you can see that it has already started by 1918s. And in 1918, modernism was also prevalent, in fact, was at its peak. So modernism was at its peak during this time, and interwar period had just started. So you can say that there were two timelines, two periods going on simultaneously, going on parallel to each other. Okay, and this interwar period ends by about 1945s. I mean, to be more accurate, more there's nothing like accuracy in here, but you can take this timeline to be 1950s as well. Okay, that won't be wrong either. So postmodernism we know started about 1945s and ended by 2000s. And in the same way, metamodernism had already started in 1990. Okay. But as you can see that postmodernism didn't end by 2000. So how could have metamodernism start by 1990s? So again, the same thing happened in these 10 years from 1990 to 2000. Postmodernism and metamodernism were running parallel, were going on simultaneously. A better example would be like this. This is why I created this drawing in the morning. So this timeline, you can consider it that this is modernism. From here to here, it's modernism. And then from here to here, it is interwar period. It is the interwar period. And as you can see, this is here. But this is the common timeline between modernism and interwar period. Okay. So this is how like they were going on. It's not like Just a second. It was not like first here to here, this is modernism, then this is uh, interwar period, then this is postmodernism, and then this is metamodernism. No, no, no. It was more like modernism, and then interwar period, and then postmodernism, then postmodernism or metamodernism. So during one time, two periods were simultaneously in procession together. Okay, like they were running parallel to each other, just like I said. So there were some specific timelines, there were some specific time frames when two periods were running parallel. Okay. Moving on, so you know how some period started at some time and then ended at some other point of time while another period was going on at the same time. Okay, so postmodernism, like modernism, is also characterized by its eclectic approach. What is eclectic? Eclectic means taking inspiration, ideas, or style from various sources. Okay, from not just one source, but from several sources. From a these fragments. Now, this part is yeah, from here to here. This part is not at all important. If you want, you can skip it. If you want to read it, you can read it as well. So the use of fragmented forms, these fragments. Now, of course, to understand it better, you would have to read this poem, "The Wasteland," which is written by T.S. Eliot, an amazing author, amazing writer, and I think amazing poet. Yeah. So this here is a reference to T.S. Eliot's poem "The Wasteland," and it tells about how there's a line in there. These fragments I have showed against my ruins. So these fragments are actually fragments of the past, fragments of how the past authors used to write, how they used to express themselves. So he's trying to show his remorse, his feelings of remorse by writing this line and saying that I have collected these past achievements, this honor of the past, which has been broken down into many forms now. So I have collected it all and I have kept it with me. This is what he's trying to convey through these lines. Moving on, modernism is characterized by okay. Now this is the point from where we'll start creating our notes. Modernism is characterized by so now whenever you read this word characterize, you understand now we've understood by this point that they're trying to tell us one of the qualities of modernism, one of the ways in which we can identify modernism or separate it out from others, right? So you'll need to make a note of it definitely. Lost those fragments. So what's the note, what's the main point of the note? Now in this line, what is the most important point? Most important point is this word regrets. So modernism and regret here. Okay, what are they trying to tell us? They're trying to tell us that modernism is characterized, is shown by regrets for having lost those fragments from the earlier age. So we know that modernism is, kind of regretful that we lost our past glory, we lost our past honor, we lost our techniques from the past. It is kind of remorseful. So you will create this note here. You write modernism regrets for past. Okay, it means it definitely liked past, and there's going to be a what where's that? There's going to be conflict later on between these characteristics of modernism, which I'll definitely explain. Eliot's line quoted above is a despairing nostalgia for what has been lost. So here it shows that the line written above here, these fragments I've showed against my room. These lines actually show a nostalgia, feeling of nostalgia for what has been lost. Okay, so I hope you know what nostalgia means, right? Nostalgia means a longing for the past. Okay, a longing for some. It could be some particular period as well for the past, and despairing as well. I hope you are all aware of it. Despairing, depressed, kind of like that. So it shows a regretful or sad, a sad feeling of nostalgia for what has been lost. Okay, these lines, this line, these lines, they show a sad feeling. Uh, how the author is feeling sad about having lost the past, about having lost the past techniques, the past there's no specific word for it. You can just collectively call it as culture, having lost the past culture. Okay, moving on again. Now, this from here to here, it's not important. You can just completely skip it, cut it off. Actually, I think we've already done this part. Yeah, sorry. Despairing nostalgia, but the postmodernist, now this again here is important. Postmodernist celebrates the fragmentation as it liberates him or her from. So, through this line, we get to know a characterization, a characteristic, sorry, of postmodernism, right? We get to know. So, we may have to make a note. So, you just make a note in here, just write. Uh, Of course, now since you're making these notes in your notebook and not on the computer, you can just use a black pen, write modernism, and just write against it regrets for past. In the next line, just start with postmodernism. Whenever another characteristic of modernism comes, just write another heading for modernism. Okay, so you can, in a way, you can have 10 to 15 different headings, different titles of the same name, modernism itself, with each of them having one quality each. Okay, like each of them having one quality written against it. So in this way, you can just create your on the spot notes, and it will be really easy as well. So since I have a computer and I can keep on making amendments to it, I've just written them like this together. And of course, you won't be able to write it together if you're using a notebook, because you can't undo things on it, right? So you can just keep on moving it with another new heading of the same name, then another new heading of the same name. Okay, so moving on, writing our first note for postmodernism celebrates fragmentation from past as it liberates from fixed system of beliefs. Now, this is important in the line that it is celebrating the fragmentation. What is different here? Modernism was showing despair. It was sad. It was feeling, can't remember, but whatever. It was feeling sad for having lost the past culture. But on the other hand, postmodernism is actually happy. It's so happy that it's celebrating that finally we get rid of that past culture, and it was kind of fixing us to a particular system of beliefs. It was too rigid. It was very rigid. It had too many rules and regulations and all that. And I want to be free. I want to be free bird. So that's what's the difference between modernism and postmodernism is. Now you must be wondering, however, that if modernism didn't want to lose the past, then why did modernism come into place in the first place? Okay, why did modernism came into existence? Modernism was definitely a reaction against the past culture, right? As we read in the previous video. Then why was there any need for modernism at all? Okay, when even modernist artists didn't want to lose the past culture. Now sometimes a thing becomes too much. You definitely love your parents, right? But sometimes they become too strict. They bind you under too many rules. So obviously you'd want to leave them, right? You'd want to leave them and live your own life. It's not like you're going to throw them out, okay, or you're going to permanently leave them. What I mean here is that you'd like to go out of their control sometimes. You'd like to feel liberated from them, right? You'd like to feel that if I had my own life, if I could create my own rules, then wouldn't it be so much better? So the same way these people felt, that even though we love our past culture, even though past culture is really good, but it is too much now. It is too much binding, okay? It is too much strict, and we need to enjoy some freedom for some time. Like when your parents let you go to the market, or when in the evening you're going out with your friends. At that point of time, you definitely feel much better than at home, right? Why is that? Because at home you are under, like you're under control, like anyone can control you, okay, like you're completely under their control. But when you go out, when you enjoy yourself, you're like your own master. You can do whatever you want, okay, you have a kind of freedom. And freedom, my friend, is the most important thing. It's more valuable than money, even. That's saying something. So this is what they wanted. They wanted a little bit of freedom. They wanted a little bit of break from the past culture. And that is the reason why modernism came into existence. And we've written now a note of the postmodernism. Now moving on, the second difference relates to the attitude or tone of the work. Now the second difference is actually more physical than philosophical. Modern art, literature, and architecture were critical of the over elaborate art forms of the 19th century. So what does this line convey? Now there's another conflict here, right? Previously we were saying that modernism was characterized. No, no, sorry. Modernism shows regrets for having lost the past culture. Okay, and now here we are saying that modern art, literature, and architecture are critical of the over elaborate art forms. So there's a conflict, right? At one point we're saying modernism liked the past. Now we're saying that modernism didn't like the past. So again, it's not the person, but it's the person's qualities. In the same way, it's not the past culture. It's just a few things about the past culture. Now, definitely, all the Hindus in here like their religion, right? But if the sati pratha, if the child marriage, if the widow, if I mean, no widow remarriage was still in continuation, you wouldn't like your a religion so much as you do now, right? You wouldn't, right? It's not your religion that you dislike. It was some practices. It was some practices within your religion that you did not like, and you removed and made it better, right? In the same way, modern art and literature liked in general, or it did like the past culture, but there were some things that it didn't like. One of them which over elaborate art forms, like too much focus on beautification, on aesthetics, and little focus on its practicability. Let's say that word we used that amiro ke chonchle. It's the same thing, similar to that. Say if you go to a three-star restaurant, okay, you get the same food, and then you get to a five-star restaurant, and they decorate the food in this way, that way, this and that, and it tastes the same. Then a rational person will obviously think that why would I pay so much and go to a five-star restaurant when I can get the same taste at a three-star, two-star restaurant by paying so much less? So this is what these people started thinking also. That why do we spend so much money, so much time, so much skill on something that has no use? Okay, you create a home, the you like during prehistoric times, our ancestors used to live in caves, right? Caves were serving the same purpose as houses, but they weren't so great. So we started creating a house, a single room, single block house. But from that, we have come to 2 BHK, 3 BHK, 4 BHK flats, and all that, and all different kinds of houses. So now the purpose of the house has been lost, and it has become more of a decoration, in fact, right? Even more so decoration than a practical purpose. So that's what they're trying to say, that and even in that house now, even our houses have become a kind of decorative places. Still it has most of it is practical, okay. But let's say that you pay as much as the house, like you pay the same amount, you pay for a house to make you some designer glasses or to create some designing over elaborative walls. So people stopped doing these kind of things. Okay, people gained their sense and they started thinking that no, 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 no more aesthetics, no more beauty. We will now focus on its purpose or on its practicability. Okay, so this was one thing that modernism did not like about the past, and you have to write it critical of over elaborate art forms of the past. Okay, so this is something that they did not like, that the modern people did not like. Fierce asceticism was one of the features of modernism. Now you can write another of your note. I don't know if I've already written it. Yeah, so you can read the rest of the note here as well. Let me just edit it a bit. Okay, so yeah, so fierce asceticism means like kind of leaving worldly pleasures and become austere. Austere, I don't think you'd understand austere. Let me just search it up real quick. Asceticism. pause the video for a second because of audio issues. But moving on, you understand what asceticism is. So asceticism is living a really simple life without any kind of over elaborative structures, decorations, just living a very, very practical life. Okay, whatever is necessary, that's all that you have, and nothing extra. So modernist architects, they ignored decoration. They said that the house is actually a machine to live in. Okay, not to decorate, but to live in. I don't think I need to stress it that much. I hope you already get what I'm trying to say here. The remarkable thing about this high idealism was that even when it was aesthetic in nature and shunned all aesthetic, just to remember these, I'll tell you a simpler way how you can remember the meaning of aesthetic and aesthetic. So aesthetic, as it has as, okay, so you can remember it's related to beauty. Aesthetic means related to beauty or beautiful, and aesthetic, this is aesthetic. Okay, aesthet. This has th kind of sound. Okay, beauty has th kind of sound, and aesthetic seems a little more empty. Okay, so esse, it's related like more more air and less voice, and this has more voice and less air. So aesthetic means simple, simple. Okay, aesthetic is equal to simple life, aesthetic is equal to beautiful life. That's the basic difference between these two. And the remarkable thing here, what was it? It was that even though it was practically as just substitute it with its actual meaning. So we will read it as that even when it was really simple in nature and shunned all beautiful ornamentation, it had the power to move. So what the author is trying to say here, that even though it wasn't created for any beautiful purpose, there were no decorations, there was nothing else, it still had the power to move. What does beauty have? Beauty has the power to move, to bring out your emotions, right? That's what a beautiful thing does. It brings out your emotions. So this thing, this same thing was done by something that was aesthetic in nature, that was not beautiful. This is the contradiction here. This is what the artist is trying to say, that even though the modernist architecture was not beautiful, was not created with the intention of being beautiful, it still was beautiful. Okay. So, in postmodern literature written in the 1950s, soon after the end of the World War II, first let's see when did World War II finish? And so it's ended by 1945. Why? What are they still trying to say by the 1950s? Soon after, it's already 5 years after World War II ended. This is reflected in minimalism and by shrinking poems to two words line. So here they are trying to take away any beauty inside it. They are trying to keep it really simple. That's why they shrunk the poems to two words line. And minimalism means writing as minimal as can and expressing as much as they can. Samuel Beckett brought a new theatre of monumenous plays. Now, this is again not at all important. Just skip all of this. Postmodern criticism. Now, this is important. This is really important here. One, two, three, four, five. Then let's start from here. So, postmodern themes like the absurdity and meaninglessness of existence, the loss of hope of restoring meaning and order to life are explored in the literary. So, before starting, let me tell you what criticism exactly means. Criticism not only means finding out or pointing out the bad qualities in a thing, it also means finding out the good qualities as well, pointing out the good qualities as well. And the third thing that it means is that it also points out the areas where there is need for improvement. So basically, we associated criticism with negative comments. Okay, but it means both. It means negative plus positive comments. So here we'll get to read the negative sides of postmodernism, which according to authors were, of course, according to established writers and authors, but we'll also get to see what they liked in postmodernism, what the qualities of postmodernism was. Not qualities, but good qualities, since quality can be bad and good. So postmodern themes, these themes like themes is what they write about. So postmodern artists. Okay. Another code word I'll tell you here that will refer to postmodern through PM. PM is equal to postmodernism. M is equal to modernism. PM is equal to postmodernism, and PPM or MM is equal to postmodernism or metamodernism. Like we have our here, this here is modernism for PM for postmodernism, and PPM or MM for postmodernism or metamodernism. So PM themes, so PM had or was written or was based around themes, like themes is basically the category or topics around absurdity, meaninglessness of existence, loss of hope. So this is something that the artists, that the writers don't like. They're saying that PM literature was too much negative. Okay, they're saying that PM literature was based on negative subjects, on negative topics, because obviously this absurdity. I mean, absurdity. What kind of a theme this is? Absurdity means doing something foolish. Okay, something that doesn't make sense. Meaninglessness of existence. This is a depressing thought again. Then the loss of hope is ultimate depressive thing to say. If there's no hope, like I don't think you can go any worse than that. Of restoring order and meaning to life. So these negative topics, these negative themes were tried upon by the PM writers, the PM authors. Don't take it as prime minister authors, it's postmodernist authors again. So these were experimented upon by, they were again moving on. PM identities are not seen in a single genre. Okay, now this is good quality. According to me, of course, I think this is good quality. I don't know if the writers wrote it in such a manner or they were just making fun of it again. So PM identities are not seen in a single genre representing a literary work, but in a mixing of genres such as thrillers, myths. So what it's trying to saying is that it wasn't written about a particular genre. That if we're writing about an action tale, then there can be no romance in it. There can be no mystery in it. There can't be any kind of adventure in it. They were more like mixing two, three genres together. Nowadays, you don't see anything without two or three genres in it, right? Even if you see a movie, you see anything. It always has two or three. It always fits itself in two or three different kinds of categories of genres. Okay, like a movie can be horror at the same time it can be romantic tale as well, like Beauty and the Beast maybe. Uh, a movie can be, it may have fantasy elements. It can also have action in it. It will also have adventure in it. It can also have romance in it and horror in it, all mixed up together. For a very good example of it would be the Harry Potter epic, of course, one of my personal favorites. So this is what was seen in postmodern. Before this, if there was a romantic tale, then it would go on like romantic tale itself. There wouldn't be much action in it. But now a romantic tale can be really, can be full of action. It can be seen like the main protagonist was like this and this. He had such a great body. He had this, and he had to fight so many people to get to the girl he loved. Okay, so it's a kind of a mix up of action and romance, right? Previously, it would be a very kind of boring and silly tale that the person that guy loved that girl. They started meeting, then they started exchanging letters, then they finally get to go together and they married happily. That. There wouldn't be any action in it. There wouldn't be any kind of mystery in it. There would be nothing much except for romance. So postmodernism saw this mixing up of genres. So only this point up to here is important. Now definitely you can write it down if you wish to. I haven't written it and I won't write it either. Okay, I'm not making any more notes. So you just write down your own notes. We'll create it on the spot. Where were we? Here. The past is not destroyed as in modernism. So we obviously know that the past was destroyed in modernism. Sorry, I'll just say it as capital M. So the past was destroyed in M, but the PM revisits the past with irony. Okay, it's kind of like mocking the past. So obviously, in M, that is in modernism, the past had to be destroyed, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be any concept of modernism. If the past wouldn't go, modernism cannot come. What I'm trying to say here that since modernism was itself a reaction against the past had to be destroyed in order to bring it into existence. And this is what happened. And that is why modernism was completely against the past. I'm not saying again that it was even though I use the word completely against the past, I don't mean it in that sense. That it didn't it highly disliked the past or it hated the past. It's not like that. It's just it was completely different from the past. Different in the manner of writing styles, writing genres, and the kind of audience, the taste that the audience had. When I say it was completely different, I don't mean that they disliked each other or they hated each other, since we already know that modernism missed the past. What I'm trying to say is that it was different in nature, only in nature, not against, but just different. And so the postmodernism, that is the PM, it revisits the past. It means it tries to make use of the past once again, but it uses it in its own way, in its own twisted way. Okay, sometimes it makes fun of the past. Sometimes it gives some values from the past. Okay, so but it has made use of the past. This is what I'm trying to say, that the PM is trying to make use of the past and not neglecting it. The two tramps at the center of the play, Wait for Godot, Lucky's garble speech is also an example of the mind seeking. So this up to here is again not important. You can just cross it down. I don't know how to cross it. Otherwise, I would. Can't see where that crossing section is. Okay, well, whatever. Forget it. Moving on, the meaninglessness of waiting, an activity that we carry throughout our lives, is again an attempt to seek a non-existent external savior or force to alleviate our misery and suffering. So they're saying that we are, in the past, people were always waiting, waiting for some miracle to happen, waiting for God to come and save them from this cruel world. So, meaninglessness of waiting. So, waiting, we have always been waiting. Like, ever since the advent of the human civilization, people have always done this thing, and it is very natural. Waiting, like I don't mean waiting for someone particular. I mean waiting in like waiting for some kind of unexpected thing to happen, waiting for some kind of miracle to happen. And it is very meaningless, as has been proved by experience, that this waiting is not really meaningful, like nothing really happens. It is just meaningless. But still, this is a thing that we have been doing throughout our lives because this is some kind of belief that we just can't give up on. And it is an attempt, and here the author is saying that it is an attempt to seek a non existent external savior. That we are always waiting for what? We're always waiting for some kind of outside savior, for some kind of external savior to come and deliver us from this cruel world. And this kind of savior does not exist. It's a non existent savior. And since the person you're waiting for does not exist, the thing that you're doing becomes meaningless, right? That's why he's used the meaninglessness of waiting, and savior or force to alleviate our misery and suffering, to get off this misery and suffering. Okay, now again from this to this is not important. You can just skip it. Now, postmodernism in or metamodernism in literature and art. Again, not much of it is important, just a little bit. So we have seen that the 20th century was dominated by modernism and postmodernism. Yeah, we know because where's our table here? Modernism was from 19 to 1930s, and from 1945s to 2000s it was postmodernism. So definitely they dominated this century. In the last decades of the century, however, there came a shift to postmodernism or metamodernism. That was both a reaction against and a perpetuation. Perpetuation means continuation or preservation of modernist aesthetics. Okay, aesthetics again, living a simple, austere life. So in the last decades, there came a shift to post, or that was both a reaction against and perpetuation of modernist aesthetics. So they're trying to say that this meta-modernism that came into existence by the end of the 20th century, it was kind of a, like it was a mix. It was in the no, it wasn't. I can't relate it to anything else. It was unique. So it was like something against the modernism, but still continuing some things from the modernism. Okay, like it actually, like rejected some things from modernism and just applied some things from it. Okay, So it was kind of a mix of both. It was, like continuously against modernism and tried to point out the things that it didn't like. And in the same time, it was applying new things from modernism. It was continuing the legacy of modernism. So more like just took out the bad things and continued the good things. The later postmodernism of the 1980s rejected modernist asceticism as elitist and insisted on mixing bits and pieces from the past ages. Like I said, that the PM makes use of the past. So here it is. So after the 1980s, PM started making use of this past. It started rejecting the modernist asceticism, that is its predecessor's theory, its predecessor's philosophy. So it started rejecting this. And what was the reason? It said that it was too elitist, it was too much elite, too much strict standard. And it insisted that we still need some things from the past. The past wasn't all that bad, okay, and we're going to make use of those things, such as what? Colorful imagery, viewpoints, vocabulary in a bizarre and jumbled way. One such example is that of Craig Raine, who, along with the invented what is known as, so this is a new form of poetry, which is what known as Martian poetry, because it was the first of its kind and it had this title, A Martian Sends a Postcard Home. So there's this whole novel, which, sorry, not novel, this whole poem, which you can read if you want here, but I don't think it's really important. In fact, we can skip all of this part from here to here. It's not important at all. Then again, of course, I do recommend that you read it all, but it's not necessary either way. Okay, skip this and this and this. Yeah, from here it might be important, just a little bit, not much, but it's still good to just read it and understand. In 1980, German theorist Jürgen Habermas looked at modernism as a continuation of the Age of Enlightenment, with its focus on reason, its break with blind faith. So this German theorist Jürgen Habermas, so he saw modernism as the continuation of the past itself. It didn't say that modernism is something new. Instead said that modernism is something old, the age of enlightenment, but just in a modified form. Okay, it's the same, even in older tradition, but just a little bit modified. Now its focus was on reason, and it had broke relations with blind faith in what in previous traditions, in the obedience of religious precepts. So it had broken away from strict rigid rules that were unhealthy, and it has created something unique, something new, which was only full of the good things of the past. He felt that the French structuralists like Michael Foucault, okay, this is not important again. Then Jean-Francois Lyotard, in his essay "What is Modernism" in 1982, obliquely questioned. Obliquely means indirectly, not exactly pointing out. Okay, questioned Habermas' attack. So when in the end there is S and you need to write another S after it, you just put this uh, what was it? Kind of inverted comma, this inverted comma before this S, okay, and read it as Habermas. Habermas. Okay, you don't read it as Habermas. You read it as Habermas itself. Attack on modernist attempts at artistic experimentation and at ending the heritage of avant-gardists. This avant-gardist is again not important. But what he's trying to say here is that it questioned this German theorist's attack on modernist attempts at artistic experimentation, because obviously modernism was about experimentation. If you had to sum it up in one word, modernism would be experimentation. Okay, since it experimented, this was something new, something that the previous generation didn't dare to do or hadn't tried at least. And this was something completely new, something unexpected. Okay, so this was a kind of new experimentation. So he tried to point out that why Habermas is attempting to attack this artistic experimentation. Okay, because he said na, that modernism is not something new, it's something old. But this person here is saying that why is he saying that it is old when it is clearly new, when there have been so many artistic experimentations. So how can this thing be old? This thing is definitely new, na? That's why they had to do experiment. That's why it's called experiment, because the result is unpredictable. and this is something that hasn't been done before. This is something new. He said that the Enlightenment had been authoritative, prescriptive, and overarching in legislating our lives. So he said that they are definitely against each other. He said that you are saying that modernism is the continuation of Enlightenment, okay? But the Enlightenment period was really strict. The Enlightenment period was very authoritative. But on the other hand, modernism is not authoritative. Modernism is not so rigid. Modernism is, in fact, about being more liberal. Modernism is about breaking up from the past and having your own freedom. So how can you compare these two things with each other? That's what Jean Lyotard is trying to convey here. Such meta-narratives had been such meta-narratives seeking to explain reason and order did not accommodate plurality and differences. So what you need to pay attention to in this here is the word meta-narratives. Okay, now you won't be able to easily find its meaning when you Google it. Okay, it's kind of a complex thing, and you need to understand it. You can't just read its meaning and then you get what it is. But still, to simplify things, I'll just tell it to you straight. So what meta narrative mean is meta narratives is a kind of huge text. It's kind of a really large text that tries to teach you human. Wait, I've just written it. I just forgot the words of what they were exactly. But I had written it somewhere here around here. Jean Lyotard. Here he is. Destruction suitable according to. Sorry. It's just taking a bit longer than I expected. Well, yeah, meta narratives were huge narratives that attempt to provide universal explanations for human existence, history, society, or culture. So they were kind of, like instructive text. Okay, they tried to explain to you what the meaning of human existence is, what is the importance of our society, what is the importance of our culture. Mahabharata can be one example of this kind of text. Okay, the kind of meta narrative. Ramayana can be a kind of meta narrative because they tried to give you instructive values. Okay, they try to tell you, teach you more like these are the things, these are the important things. Like in Mahabharata, there are so many instructions. Okay, there were so many instructions about do this, don't do this kind of thing. A good person should do these kind of things. So it's a very instructive text, and it's kind of more like imposing its instructions on the reader. So this was what meta narrative was, a huge narrative, a really big narrative that gave you its views, or that attempted to provide explanations, okay, universal explanations that fit every person at this in the same manner. For what? For human existence. Now the main thing is its topic. It's the subject manner on which it provided explanation. It was more philosophical and more religious, so that is why these were called meta narratives and not simply epics. Okay, epic is also a really big poem, or they can just say stories or poems or epics. But why did they use the word meta narratives? This is the reason. Because in the narration there was instructive text hidden in it, which he considered was a quintessential feature of modernity. What we know from this is that in modernism, uh, meta narratives were being written. So in this period, again, this thing had started. People started writing large pieces of literature, giving instructions or giving their own explanations. What they thought was their own universal explanation would be a better choice of word. So they started giving their own universal explanations about such philosophical subjects, like how a person should behave, how a person should stay, what kind of habits he should have, or what kind of qualities should he have, or how should his or her thinking be. Okay, so this is what they kind of started teaching people again. So Lyotard said that this is a very important, most important, you can say, most important feature of modernity. In fact, here's the twist. Lyotard was the person himself who introduced this term postmodernism. Okay, he was the one who yeah, notion of knowledge in postmodern society. As we missed this one line here, that he Lyotard analyzed the notion of knowledge in postmodern society as the end of grand narratives. So up before this time, before postmodernism, they were writing meta narratives, or the grand narratives were in existence, which I explained to you what they are. So Lyotard says that the knowledge that is in postmodern society is nothing but just the murder, the killing of these grand narratives, the end of these grand narratives. Okay. So Lyotard is trying to say that postmodern society is nothing new. It's not like how modernism was, like completely different from the past. It is the same as modern. They have just removed these grand narratives. Okay, that's the difference. So this is what Lyotard is trying to say. Those grand rules that purported towards establishing progress and human perfectibility are no longer tenable. Hence, the change was for mini narratives that provide a basis for different groups placed in different circumstances. Okay, so he's saying that mini narratives and all these kind of things were in existence now, and they had removed the grand narratives. Narratives were removed. Now, this point you might like to read it, or you don't. It's not important from here to, let me tell you, from here to here. The rest of the chapter is not important at all. You may skip it completely, doesn't matter. On my part, I've read it and I've comprehended it quite accurately. Not accurately, I can't use the word accurately since all of this work is very philosophical. So there's nothing like accuracy in here, but I've had my own comprehension of what these things could mean. And I wouldn't be explaining it here because it doesn't really matter. It won't come in the exam, and you can just read it for seeing how much you can comprehend from it. Just a kind of test. Going on to the second chapter, then I do highly advise though that you do these word meanings or read them at least 3 times. If you can't remember them, don't want to remember, then just ignore, but read it 3 times at least. I mean, don't try to remember them, but just read them. Second would be modernism in poetry, which we won't do right now, which we'll be doing in the next chapter, next video. My throat is already hurting. I forgot to drink water today. Okay.